Inside the walls of the world's toughest prisons, there are inmates whose stories continue long after the courtroom doors have closed. Their trials may be over, but their sentences have only begun. These are the individuals whose crimes shocked entire nations, whose names filled headlines, and whose fates became the subject of documentaries, debates, and courtrooms overflowing with grief. Every case you're about to hear is real. Every prison is real. And every sentence is permanent. Case 1, Alex Murdaugh. Alex Murdaugh once lived a life filled with power, prestige, and influence. His name opened doors. His family controlled legal corridors across South Carolina for nearly a century. But power can crumble quickly, and for Murdaugh, it collapsed in the most violent way possible. Convicted of murdering his wife Maggie and son Paul, Murdaugh is now serving 2 consecutive life sentences. Gone are the tailored suits, the courtroom confidence, and the wealth he once flaunted. Today, he wakes up each morning inside a level 5 maximum security prison, McCormick Correctional Institution, one of South Carolina's harshest. Inside McCormick, every inmate is stripped of identity. To the guards, Murdaugh isn't a lawyer, a powerhouse, or a millionaire. He's inmate number 00390320. His day starts at 5 a.m., when bright fluorescent lights slam on. He sleeps on a thin bunk welded to concrete. His unit echoes with noise, shouting, metal clanging, arguments in the distance. Prison officers note that Murdaugh spends long hours alone, pacing, reading, and staring at the floor with a fixed expression. Inmates convicted of harming family members, especially children, are some of the most hated inside any prison. Murdaugh knows this. And that's why he's kept in protective custody, isolated from the general population. His meals are delivered through a slot in the door. His recreation time is spent in a small fenced cage, alone, under constant watch. He used to command a room. Now, he can't command his own day. Experts say Murdaugh struggles with the psychological weight of losing everything: reputation, career, legacy, and family. Even his remaining relatives maintain distance. His world has shrunk to 8 by 10 feet, and that space will never expand again. For someone who once lived in mansions and argued million-dollar court cases, this existence is a slow, unending collapse. No appeals, no hearings, no second chance. Just years, decades, and eventually a lifetime of isolation. Case 2, Chris Watts. Chris Watts committed one of the most disturbing family annihilation crimes in American history. After the murder of his pregnant wife Shanann and their 2 daughters, public outrage surged across the country. Now serving multiple life sentences in Wisconsin's Dodge Correctional Institution, Watts lives under permanent protective custody, separated from others due to extreme danger. Inmates despise family killers, especially those who harm children. His cell is small, bare, and silent. He spends up to 23 hours a day inside it. Watts' life is defined by routine. Wake up. Eat alone. Shower alone. 1 hour of isolated recreation. Return to confinement. Former inmates describe Dodge as cold, emotionless, and psychologically draining. There are no friendships, no social interactions, no distractions. Only time, slow, painful time. Guards have reported that Watts keeps photos of his daughters. He is known to express regret, though many experts believe it's motivated by guilt rather than empathy. He receives hate mail weekly. He receives threatening letters monthly. Interviews reveal he often hears insults shouted from other units. This is not a quick punishment. It is a lifelong reminder of what he took from the world. Case 3, Patrick Frazee. Colorado. Patrick Frazee was convicted of the brutal murder of his fiancée Kelsey Barrett, a case that shocked the entire country. His cruelty, the planning, and the disposal made him one of Colorado's most despised inmates. Frazee is serving life without parole plus 156 years. Inside Colorado's maximum security facility, Frazee lives in what inmates describe as a pressure cooker environment. Every movement is controlled. Every interaction is monitored. Frazee has few visitors. No public supporters. No allies inside prison walls. Because of the emotional nature of his crime, and because Berith was a mother, Frazee faces constant hostility. Inmates insult him during meal distribution. Some have attempted to pass threats through slot doors. Frazee spends most of his day pacing in his cell, staring out at the empty hallway. He requested transfer once, denied. He attempted to join work programs, denied. He is stuck. Permanently. Case 4, Mark Redwine. Mark Redwine murdered his own 13-year-old son Dylan. After years of denial, lies, and manipulation, the truth finally caught up to him. Redwine now lives under heavy supervision inside Colorado DOC. Because he murdered a child, he is considered a high-risk inmate, not because he is dangerous, but because others want to kill him. His prison life is quiet, monotonous, and tense. He avoids eye contact with other inmates. Guards have noted his nervous behavior. He walks with his head down, rarely speaking. He lost his freedom. He lost the public sympathy. He lost everything, slowly and painfully. His life sentence ensures he will never experience a day of peace again. Case 5, Letecia Stauch. Letecia Stauch murdered her 11-year-old stepson Gannon, then lied repeatedly, manipulating police, media, and even her own family. The case shocked the world. Now serving life without parole, Letecia lives in Colorado's women's prison under restricted housing. Guards report she struggles with isolation. She has a reputation for erratic behavior and unpredictable outbursts. Female inmates, especially mothers, have shown extreme hostility toward her. She receives threats through vents. Meal trays arrive with insults scratched into the packaging. Prison is unforgiving. And for Letecia, every day reflects that reality. Case 6, Vallow Daybell. Vallow became known as the Doomsday Mom after the murders of her children Tylee and JJ. Her bizarre beliefs, smiling court appearances, and chilling lack of remorse made her one of America's most infamous women. Inside Idaho's women's prison, Lori spends most of her time in a single cell under constant observation. Her religious fantasies have faded. Other inmates reject her completely. She avoids communal areas when possible, fearing confrontation. Her mental state has reportedly deteriorated. Night pacing. Talking to herself. Writing notes with prophecies. Her sentence is life without parole. Her world is now silence, concrete, and unending years. Sheila Davalloo, USA. A love triangle that turned into years of prison isolation. Sheila Davalloo was once a research scientist, intelligent and articulate, but her obsession with a coworker spiraled into one of the strangest and darkest love triangle murder cases in American history. After attacking her husband and murdering a romantic rival, she received 2 consecutive sentences ensuring she will grow old in prison. Today, Sheila lives inside New York's Bedford Hills Correctional Facility, the state's most secure prison for women. Here, inmates with violent histories are monitored closely, and Sheila's case has placed her under special review due to her manipulative behaviors. Her cell is plain, a metal bunk, a steel toilet, and a narrow slit window overlooking layers of razor wire. She works prison assignments but is prohibited from any role involving access to tools due to the nature of her crime. Prison officials describe her as highly intelligent but emotionally unpredictable. She is not permitted to participate in certain programs due to the risk level attached to her file. And while she tries to socialize, inmates often distance themselves, not trusting a woman who murdered for love, twice. For Sheila, the hardest punishment is not bars or restrictions, it is the forced invisibility. Once the center of attention, she now lives in a world where no one believes her, no one trusts her, and no one cares about her explanations anymore. Louise Porton, UK. The mother who took the lives she was meant to protect. Louise Porton's case shocked the UK, a young mother, calm and expressionless, found guilty of killing her 2 daughters because they got in the way of her lifestyle. When she entered prison, even the guards noted the reaction: silence, disbelief, disgust. At HMP Bronzefield, female inmates follow their own code, and crimes against children are the ultimate violation. Louise was placed in protective custody immediately. She eats alone. She walks the corridors escorted by officers. She does not mix with the general population during recreation. Her days are tightly controlled. She rarely leaves her cell except for mandatory checks, medical visits, or monitored therapy sessions. Even in prison, she avoids eye contact, showing the same detachment that stunned the courtroom. Prison psychologists often assess inmates like Louise to monitor emotional response, remorse, or risk of self-harm. Reports indicate she shows flat affect, no visible emotional reaction. Her life now is one of permanent isolation. There are no visits. No friends. No family support. Just the constant awareness that she will never again step outside those concrete walls, and that every inmate around her knows what she did. Kelly Cochran, USA. From normal wife to one of Michigan's most disturbing offenders. Kelly Cochran's case reads like a horror script, a love triangle involving her husband, her lover, and a hidden pact that ended in death. Her unpredictable behavior, violent history, and chilling confessions led to one of the harshest sentences in Michigan. Inside prison, Kelly stands out for one reason: inmates fear her. Prison officials placed her under constant supervision due to violent outbursts and threats. Her cell is located on a restricted block for high-risk female offenders. Cameras track her movements. Guards maintain extended distance protocols. She is not allowed normal tools, not permitted kitchen work, and often eats in her cell to prevent conflict. Psychologists note she displays traits of antisocial personality disorder, lack of remorse, impulsive aggression, and manipulative charm. These traits make her unpredictable, which is one of the worst labels a prisoner can have. Kelly spends her days cycling through evaluations, controlled recreation, and long hours in isolation. Inmates whisper about her case, guards stay alert, and her file is flagged for high risk until the day she dies. Myra Hindley, UK. Britain's most hated woman and a life of endless isolation. Myra Hindley remains one of the most reviled criminals in UK history. Her involvement in the Moors murders ensured she would never see freedom again. When she entered prison, officers said the reaction from inmates was immediate: they refused to breathe the same air as her. For decades, Myra lived in extraordinary isolation. She was moved between prisons for safety, including Holloway and High Point, always under protection. Inmates threatened her life repeatedly, leading officers to treat her like a high-risk target rather than a high-risk offender. Every day, she lived with barriers, reinforced doors, restricted movement, and constant observation. Her only interactions were with guards and psychologists. She spent years in segregation units, where the silence was described as heavy enough to break the mind. Even in old age, she was never allowed to step into general population. Her crimes were too brutal, her name too infamous. She died behind bars after decades of isolation, a life sentence that was not defined by violence, but by silence so deep it became a punishment of its own. James Holmes, the Aurora Theater shooter. James Holmes once walked into a movie theater in Aurora, Colorado in 2012 and opened fire during a midnight premiere, killing 12 and injuring 70. Today, he lives a life far removed from the chaos he created. After receiving 12 life sentences plus 3,318 additional years, Holmes was transferred to the ADX Florence Supermax, the most secure federal prison in the United States, known as the Alcatraz of the Rockies. Inside ADX, Holmes lives alone in a 7 by 12 concrete cell with a bed, desk, and a steel toilet. He spends 23 hours per day in complete isolation, with just 1 hour in a small fenced recreation cage. Inmates here cannot physically interact with one another, the goal is total sensory reduction. Holmes eats alone, exercises alone, showers alone, and experiences the world only through fluorescent lights and thick steel doors. This level of isolation is designed to break a person slowly, and experts say Holmes's mental state has deteriorated significantly. There is no pathway to freedom, no hope of release, only decades of silence ahead. Richard Allen, charged in connection with the 2017 murders of Abby Williams and Libby German in Delphi, Indiana, is currently held under one of the harshest pretrial conditions in the U.S. His case became viral because of the mystery, the evidence secrecy, and the shocking brutality. Allen is kept in near solitary confinement for his own safety, as child-related cases make inmates the #1 targets. Reports indicate his mental health is declining, not from violence, but from isolation, weight loss, and fear. He rarely sees daylight, rarely interacts with people, and is monitored constantly. Even though his trial has not concluded, his prison life has already become one of the most documented and discussed in the true crime world. Scott Peterson, the Laci Peterson case. Scott Peterson became a household name after the 2002 murder of his pregnant wife, Laci, and their unborn son, Connor. Originally sentenced to death, Peterson spent years on San Quentin's death row before being moved to a high-security facility after his sentence was overturned. Peterson now lives in a structured, monotonous routine. He works inmate jobs, has limited recreation, and has no chance of ever receiving parole. Despite remaining clean-cut and polite, he is kept at a distance by most prisoners. Many view him as manipulative and dangerous. Every day is a reminder of the case that made him one of America's most infamous men, and his appeals continue to fail. His comfort is limited, and his isolation grows with every year. Ted Bundy's final years in Florida's death row remain among the internet's most viewed true crime subjects. Bundy spent his last decade in a small, cold cell at Rayford Prison. His days were filled with interviews, failed appeals, and long stretches of isolation. His prison life was tightly controlled, limited visits, constant surveillance, and a slow mental deterioration. Even at the end, Bundy received threats from inmates who wanted to attack him before the state executed him. Bundy's final weeks were filled with fear, paranoia, and desperate attempts to delay execution. His death sentence ended one of the most notorious cases in American history. Israel Keyes. Inside the final days of America's most unpredictable killer ***. Israel Keyes was unlike any criminal America had ever seen. He traveled across states, buried kill kits years before using them, and chose victims at random. After his arrest, Keyes was held under extreme security inside the Anchorage Correctional Complex. His life behind bars was nothing like the calm, controlled hunter he was outside. He was isolated, monitored constantly, and questioned endlessly by federal investigators. Keyes refused to cooperate fully. He wanted control of the story, the details, and even the timeline. Prison staff described him as cold, calculated, and detached. He complained about surveillance, about the lights, even about being watched too closely. But despite that, he remained eerily calm. His final days showed a man trying desperately to maintain power in a world where he had none left. In December 2012, Keyes ended his own life in his cell, leaving behind a haunting note, but no closure. To this day, the FBI believes he killed many more than he ever admitted, and his death locked those secrets forever behind prison walls. Derek Chauvin. Inside the isolation of America's most hated ex-officer ***. After being convicted in the death of George Floyd, Derek Chauvin entered the federal prison system as one of the most targeted inmates in the United States. From the moment he arrived, officials knew he could not survive in general population. He was placed in a special housing unit at FCI Tucson, a quiet, heavily controlled area reserved for inmates whose safety cannot be guaranteed. Chauvin spends most of his time alone in a small cell, with limited movement and constant surveillance. Inmates who harm former officers often gain status, so any slip in security could be fatal. In 2023, he was stabbed inside prison, proving exactly how dangerous his environment is. Despite being kept away from crowds, he remains aware of the tension around him. Every day he wakes up knowing he cannot trust anyone, not inmates, and sometimes not even staff. His life behind bars is not one of violence, but one of constant fear, where every sound in the corridor feels like a warning.